Hi and welcome to the very last video here from Costa Rica, because tomorrow unfortunately I have my flight back from San Jose to Zurich, Switzerland. So yeah, not many more opportunities. I'm currently here at the Caribbean, as you might have already guessed. It's the Cauhita National Park. When I wanted to leave my last location, I packed all the photography material into the car and then realized that the car actually had a flat tire. So we needed to change that, which took like another 15-20 minutes. And then we drove here, and unfortunately it took a bit longer, and in the end there was not much more time that the Cauhita National Park was open, because it closes already at 4 p.m. However, I still managed to have a nice little walk in the park for getting a first impression, and I saw some shorebirds here along the beach and also a heron. And when I was outside of the park, I realized that they were approaching me and coming closer, so I waited outside of the park and I managed to get some shots. As usual, I tried to get a really low perspective, a low angle, and yeah, try to somehow get the sand as a background, because if it's an overcast day like it was, you may know that the sea or a lake or whatever, every water body basically reflects the sky. So if it's an overcast day, this reflection is a bit grayish to whitish, so really not a nice background for pictures. So I wanted to somehow have the sand in the background. It had a bit more color and was also a bit darker and therefore less distracting. However, this meant that I needed to go really close to the sea. I almost got wet with this low angle, and I think here it's really important to point out that you should protect your camera and especially your lens properly. So I use this solution from Tragopan. There's also the ones from Lenscoat that I use for my smaller lenses. You can also do a do-it-yourself out of a plastic bag that you somehow tie around your camera and lens. It doesn't need to be something super fancy, but it's important to keep the sand out, because sand can really ruin the gear. From my experience, it's worse for lenses than for cameras, especially if the sand somehow manages to go into the focus ring, or for zooms, especially the ones where the tubus still extends. This is really the worst. If there you get somehow sand inside it, then it makes the way inside the lens. So I was taking pictures there at the beach, and it was an overcast day. We were approaching the evening, so it was getting a bit darker. I still wanted to have a fairly short shutter speed, like 1/1000th of a second or something, for the shorebirds, because they were a bit running around and I wanted to have some action shots. So this meant I needed to bump my ISO a bit, like to 3200 or something. And this might sound like a high value, but what's important to know about ISO is that you see noise in the background the most if the background is dark and blurry. Here we have the sandy beach as a background, which is very bright, so it will be almost impossible to see noise even at 3200 ISO, so I'm really not too worried here. If I would have a bit of slower lens, such as a Canon 600mm f11 or 800mm f11, or any of these 150 to 600mm zooms with an extender or something, then I would change my tactics a bit and maybe use a longer shutter speed, like a 400th of a second, and basically take the pictures not when the shorebirds are running and are in action, but the moment when they pause and take a small break and look around, then take the pictures. But of course you have more risks of blurry shots, so maybe decide for yourself if you want to have the action with higher ISO, or if you want to have a cleaner shot but without action. This was definitely not a bad start, but I was not entirely happy with the light that I had, so I decided to try it again the next morning. So I set my alarm at 4:30. I was at the beach at around 5 o'clock, but the national park only opens at 7. I knew that, but there was a small stretch of the beach, I would say maybe around 30 meters, that was still outside the national park. So I just waited there and tried to take some pictures of the birds. I wanted to take some backlit shots, but there were some clouds just over the horizon that didn't give me this very first morning light. But the limicoles, or the shorebirds, were coming rather close. So what I did is I put my 70-200 on my camera and tried to get some more environmental shots, like with the bird in it, and seeing also a bit this Caribbean coast in the background with some clouds and nice colors in the sky. It didn't work perfectly. I would have wished that the birds would still have come a bit closer, so they would have been bigger in the picture. Of course, I could have zoomed more, but this means that I also crop out a bit of the sky, so it would have been nice if they would have approached me a bit more. But I'm already quite happy with the shots. When the sun finally pushed through, I switched back to the 600, tried some pictures with some flares and backlit, which is a bit harder if you have constant waves coming in. I find this much easier at the Mediterranean Sea, that is much calmer, or just at some random lakes. But I was still quite happy with the pictures that I got. And then I tried to go a bit around the birds to have the sun in my back. And there I was really laying on the line of the beginning of the national park, which was still okay, but I knew I could not move further behind. But I got some okay shots. Then it was still not 100% happy, so I tried again the same afternoon, evening, and then everything worked perfectly. The birds were coming in my direction, I had the sun in my back. Sometimes the birds were already in the shadow, but most of the time they were really in the perfect evening light. The heron was coming closer and he was like walking a bit towards me, but always a bit into the sea, looking for fish, out to the shore, into the sea. And it was basically perfect conditions. And you have this small area between the water and the beach, the area where the beach is really wet, so it's somehow reflecting a bit what is above. So I had a tiny part of a reflection of the heron there as well, and the colors were just amazing. So I was really happy with this evening shoot. Of course, during the day I was not just doing nothing and staying at home. I went a bit inside the forest that you can see behind me and tried to look for some mammals. And indeed we found some capuchin monkeys and some howler monkeys. But I had several issues. First of all, the light was rather harsh, it was very sunny, and this forest here is not as dense as the typical tropical rainforest that you have in the inland. Here on the shore it's a bit more open, meaning that there is more sun hitting. Second problem was that my 600mm lens was just too much in most of the cases. I really would have wished I had a 400mm 2.8 or maybe 100 to 300 2.8, something like that. I could have used the 70 to 200, but this was a bit short. The 100 to 500, I was not super happy with the background blur. So I tried with the 600mm, but it was definitely not easy. A bit later, a bit further on the beach, the capuchin monkeys were coming really close, and then I tried some portraits with the 100 to 500, because for the portraits the background blur is good enough, but sometimes when you want to include the whole monkey with the tail, you have less of a magnification and it can get harder to have a nice background. Another cool thing I saw along the shore and also at these small lagoons was the hermit crabs, and these were some animals that I only knew from biology classes but never seen in real life. So basically these are crabs that look for shells and use them as a protection, as a house, basically where they can retract themselves if they see a predator approaching. And the cool thing is that the crabs, they grow over their lifespan. So at some point the shell that they have is getting too small. So at this point they just go out of the shell and pick a new one. So they kind of move their house, and I found this super cool always. And it was so nice to see them. I tried to take some pictures and videos and also see the different types of shells that you can see that they pick with different colors and so on. I was complaining a bit about the harsh light that I had here during the day, but it was not that it was always sunny. In the last week we also had quite some rain, and there was one particular storm where it was raining for 40 minutes, like super hard. Luckily I managed before the first drop to get my equipment in the backpack. I put the rain cover over the backpack, but after 40 minutes of rain, also the backpack got very wet. And there was also a power out in the whole town for I think 4 to 5 hours due to the storm. And afterwards I tried to dry my equipment as quick as possible. For the lenses and the camera it's quite easy. Again, they didn't really get so wet. And even if usually I just open or remove the lens coat from my big lens and I just put everything on the bed or somewhere else where it can dry nicely. The backpack was a bit more a problem because it's rather a thick tissue, and this actually took longer, and this was in general a problem here in Costa Rica, or my biggest problem, like drying stuff. Like also if you need to do a quick laundry, you wash one or two shirts or socks or whatever, it takes forever until they dry, and sometimes the best tactics was to just let them dry when we drove to the next place we wanted to visit, and during this 2-hour car drive it was usually drying more than hanging it 2 days outside on the balcony. So for my f-stop I actually discovered that there are some mold spots on the outside. Luckily I checked the ICU is perfectly fine, where the camera and everything is stored. It's just the outside of the backpack. So I got some bleach towels and some extra bleach and bleached the backpack a bit. I will do a proper cleaning when I'm back in Switzerland, and also again probably bleaching it and washing it with a lot of water and then letting it dry outside in the sun. Yeah, luckily for my equipment, for the camera, this all seems to work perfectly. What I had once or twice was that there was just some random condensation that I didn't expect, because I know you should not keep the stuff in an air-conditioned room and then take it outside, but we didn't have the air condition running or anything, so overnight we just had the windows open. The camera was in this room overnight, and the next morning I went to take pictures. Everything was fine. I started taking pictures, and after 20 minutes more or less it started to condensate on the inside. There was fog on the inside. This was basically, I don't know, 20 minutes after the sunrise, so I assume it has something to do with this, because it was also happening with my 600mm, the 100 to 500 and the 70 to 200. So not specific to one lens, and I still don't know how easily you can avoid this. I know that there are some solutions with like heaters, but yeah, I think I cannot heat all 3 lenses the whole time. And as I said, it was fine for the beginning, it was fine for the most time, and suddenly it appeared. I don't know exactly if it was really a change in the humidity due to the sun, change of temperature due to the sun. But otherwise, I need to say I really enjoyed this stay in Costa Rica. I hope you like these videos here. If you want to support me, maybe give me a super thanks, check out my channel memberships. And otherwise, I'm of course also happy to just read a nice comment of yours, and see you in the next video.